Right now, there is a distinct possibility that a woman in your sphere has already chosen you, but you are completely stepping over the signals. You move through your week assuming that if a woman felt a deep, magnetic draw toward you, she would simply make it obvious. But female psychology rarely operates through direct declarations. Instead, a woman who is quietly falling into your orbit will express her desire through micro behaviors designed to test your awareness without risking her own emotional vulnerability. You keep missing these moments because you are looking for loud, unmistakable invitations while she is speaking in the quiet language of subconscious trust. This disconnect leaves so many grounded men feeling uncertain, wondering if the warm energy they feel is real or just polite friendliness. I am going to show you how to read these hidden currents with absolute clarity. By the end of this video, you will recognize the 6 subtle psychological shifts a woman exhibits when she wants to give herself to you fully, including the one final signal that 90% of men completely overlook and walk away from every single day. When a woman decides she trusts a man, her subconscious body language changes before her words ever do. This is rooted in what behavioral psychologists refer to as spatial proximity seeking, which is the automatic physical drift a person makes towards someone they view as psychologically safe and highly attractive. In everyday social interactions, every person maintains an invisible boundary known as the personal space bubble, typically extending about 18 inches around the body. When a woman has no romantic intent, that boundary remains firm, structured, and guarded against unnecessary intrusion. However, when she experiences a deep inner shift toward wanting to surrender her distance to you, that boundary does not just soften, it actively dissolves. She might lean across a small table during a quiet conversation, positioning her torso directly toward yours while allowing her forearm to rest comfortably inside your space. Notice how she handles small, everyday objects, like setting her coffee cup or phone directly next to yours rather than keeping them in her own personal zone. Of course, context always matters here, because a crowded coffee shop or a noisy venue naturally forces people closer together. But here is the detail that separates mere physical tightness from intentional psychological proximity. Watch what happens when the room clears out. If the surrounding space opens up and she remains anchored right beside you, her choice to stay within your reach is deliberate. Now, you might be thinking that she is simply being friendly or comfortable in social settings, and sometimes a naturally warm person will indeed maintain a relaxed posture around everyone. But a woman who is casually friendly still maintains subtle barriers, like keeping a purse on her lap or angling her shoulders slightly away to keep her exit open. When she wants to belong to you, those defensive shields disappear entirely. She creates a shared physical envelope where her presence feels merged with yours, inviting you to step into the space she has quietly cleared. Most men encounter this subtle proximity and treat it as pure coincidence, sitting back and maintaining a polite distance out of fear of overstepping. They assume that if she wanted to get closer, she would make an explicit move or say something direct. By staying cautious, you unintentionally signal to her that you are either oblivious to her invitation or entirely indifferent to her presence. But while spatial proximity is powerful, her vocal rhythm reveals an even deeper layer of emotional vulnerability. Listen closely to how her voice changes when the two of you are finally alone in a room. Human vocal mechanics are intimately linked to the nervous system, meaning that when a woman transitions from defensive self-protection to deep emotional comfort, her vocal folds naturally relax. Psychologists refer to this phenomenon as acoustic softening, a physiological response where the pitch lowers slightly, the tempo slows down, and the resonance becomes noticeably warmer and more intimate. When she is speaking to the outside world, her voice carries a structured, clear, and efficient tone designed for self-defense and social navigation. But when she turns to you with a desire to let her guard down, that social armor drops completely. She speaks with a softer, slightly breathier cadence, often dropping her volume just enough that you naturally have to lean in closer to hear her. Pay close attention to how she pauses between her words. Rather than rushing to fill the silence out of nervous energy, her pauses become comfortable, extended, and heavy with unspoken warmth. Naturally, a person who is simply exhausted or tired at the end of a long day might also speak in a slower, lower register. But the distinction here lies in the energy behind her eyes while she speaks. An exhausted woman detaches her gaze, while a woman whose vocal tone softens out of attraction maintains an intense, steady eye contact that draws you directly into her quiet space. You might wonder if a woman who is genuinely interested would instead sound excited, loud, or energetic around you. While high-energy excitement often marks early surface attraction, deep emotional surrender sounds entirely different. It sounds calm, safe, and deeply personal, like a secret meant only for your ears. The common mistake most men make in this moment is matching her soft vulnerability with loud, boisterous energy or heavy conversational steering. When you respond to her soft tone with loud, distracted chatter, you accidentally break the fragile atmosphere of intimacy she is trying to construct. You miss the quiet shift in the room, treating a moment of profound vocal connection like a standard everyday exchange. Vocal softness creates intimacy, but the true test of her emotional intent lies in how she handles her personal vulnerabilities. A woman only lets a man see her unpolished world when she no longer feels the need to maintain an emotional barrier. In a world where women are constantly conditioned to present a curated, flawless exterior, showing genuine imperfection is an act of high-level emotional surrender. Psychologists categorize this as vulnerability display, which occurs when an individual intentionally exposes their flaws or unedited life to signal profound trust in another person. When a woman wants to give herself to you, she stops filtering her reality to impress you. She will share personal anxieties she usually keeps hidden, talk about past mistakes without defensive excuses, or happily hang out with you without a trace of makeup and in her most casual clothes. She might let you see her home when it is not perfectly tidy, or admit to a silly mistake she made earlier in the day, completely unbothered by the risk of looking imperfect in your eyes. Think back to a conversation that once seemed ordinary, one where a woman shared a messy, unedited detail of her life, and you walked away without realizing what had actually just happened. You might have assumed she was just venting or being casual, missing the reality that she was opening her inner vault specifically to you. Context remains critical here, because some people are naturally open oversharers who dump emotional details on anyone willing to listen. But here is how you tell the difference between a chronic oversharer and a woman who is choosing you. An oversharer broadcasts her life to the entire room, whereas a woman displaying selective vulnerability only reveals these unedited fragments to you when the noise of the world fades away. She watches your reaction carefully as she shares, seeking to confirm that her true self is safe in your hands. Now, you might think that if a woman likes you, she would only want to show you her absolute best, most polished side. While that is true during the very first stages of casual dating, real romantic surrender requires the collapse of that performative wall. When she stops trying to sell you an idealized version of herself, she is quietly telling you that she trusts your judgment enough to let you see who she really is. The mistake men make here is attempting to fix her exposed problems or offering immediate logical solutions to her shared vulnerabilities. When she opens up her raw world, she is not asking for a lecture or a troubleshooting guide. She is offering you an entry point into her private life. By jumping straight into problem-solving mode, you unintentionally dismiss the emotional weight of her trust. Yet, letting you see her vulnerabilities is only half the story. The real escalation occurs when she quietly integrates you into her future decisions. Pay attention to how often she asks for your perspective on decisions that have nothing to do with you. When a woman begins to view a man as a central anchor in her life, her internal decision-making process shifts from independent isolation to subtle collaboration. Psychologists call this micro-consultation, a subconscious mechanism where a person repeatedly seeks another's input on small, everyday choices as a way to build shared alignment and gauge their wisdom. She might ask for your opinion on a minor career crossroad, consult you on how to handle a tricky family dynamic, or even ask what color shirt looks best on her. On the surface, these questions seem light and trivial, but the underlying emotional current is profound. By inviting your perspective into her daily choices, she is testing how your mind works and quietly giving you influence over her life. Notice how she uses language when discussing upcoming dates, weekend plans, or long-term events months down the road. She will casually drop phrases like "we should check out that new spot" or "we ought to take a trip there sometime," naturally weaving your presence into her mental model of the future. This is not casual small talk. It is future scripting, where her brain prepares for a life where you are continuously present. Of course, asking for advice can sometimes just be a sign that someone respects your professional expertise or general knowledge. But the key distinction here is the scope and consistency of her questions. A colleague asks for your advice on a work project and leaves it at that. A woman who wants to yield her heart to you will ask for your take on her personal tastes, her character, and her life choices. Now, you might ask yourself if this is simply a habit of an indecisive person who cannot make up her own mind. An indecisive person asks everyone in the room for validation. A woman in love selectively elevates your voice above all others, acting on your advice with a quiet, visible pride. Remember what I told you at the start, that there was one signal most men not only miss, but actively misread. We are getting close to it now, but first, understand how this investment deepens. When a man ignores these micro-consultations or dismisses them with quick, uninterested answers, he breaks the thread of shared decision-making she is trying to spin. He forces her back into complete independence, communicating that he has no interest in taking a guiding role in her world. While future planning shows commitment, there is a physical reaction she cannot fake when your attention shifts away. Touch is rarely accidental when a woman has already decided she wants to be close to you. When emotional intimacy reaches a tipping point, the body naturally seeks physical reinforcement through involuntary microgestures and sustained tactile contact. In human behavior, this is known as kinesthetic anchoring, the act of using physical touch to solidify an emotional connection and test mutual resonance. This does not look like overt, aggressive physical moves. It manifests in subtle, lingering moments that push slightly past standard social etiquette. She might brush a speck of dust off your shoulder, let her hand rest on your forearm a second too long when emphasizing a point, or touch your knee lightly while laughing at a joke. Observe how her body mirrors your exact posture when you are seated across from each other. If you lean back, she leans back. If you rest your chin on your hand, her posture shifts to replicate yours within seconds. Furthermore, observe her eye contact when the conversation pauses. Instead of quickly looking away or checking her phone, her gaze lingers on your eyes, shifts down to your lips, and moves back up in a slow, calm triangle. This micro-gesture of lingering touch and visual anchoring is a powerful indicator that her physiological defenses are down. Context must be taken into account, as some cultures and personality types are naturally very expressive with their hands. However, a person who is naturally high touch will touch everyone in the room with the exact same casual frequency. A woman whose touch carries romantic intent reserves those lingering, gentle contacts exclusively for you, often displaying a subtle blush or a soft intake of breath when your skin meets hers. You might assume that if a woman wants to touch you, she will do so in an obvious, unambiguous way that leaves zero room for interpretation. But female attraction usually operates with built-in plausible deniability, allowing her to reach out while protecting her dignity if you fail to respond. When a man misinterprets these tactile signals as random fidgeting or accidental bumps, he misses the physical green light she is extending. He pulls back or acts overly formal, causing her to feel exposed and prompting her to retreat into a protective shell. All of these signs build toward one final, critical shift, the ultimate signal of female surrender that most men completely misinterpret. The most profound moment in female psychology is when a woman completely stops resisting a man's direction and quietly yields her frame to his. Throughout the dating process and early stages of connection, a woman naturally maintains a level of psychological resistance. She tests your boundaries, questions your intentions, and evaluates your emotional stability to ensure you are a solid, reliable man. This structural evaluation is a protective mechanism designed to keep her safe from ungrounded or unpredictable men. But when she reaches a point of complete internal conviction where she wants to give herself to you entirely, that protective resistance vanishes. Psychologists call this frame alignment, the state where a woman voluntarily drops her defense mechanisms and willingly aligns her rhythm with your lead. She stops arguing over petty logistics, stops challenging your decisions just to see how you react, and actively looks to you to set the tone, direction, and energy of the relationship. When you suggest a plan, she accepts it with a calm, trusting smile rather than trying to take control of the steering wheel. If a challenge arises, she looks to your reaction to gauge how to feel, anchoring her emotional state directly to your masculine stability. She stops trying to manage you, monitor you, or keep you at a distance because she no longer feels the need to protect herself from you. This is not passive submission born out of weakness or lack of character. It is the highest form of female strength and selective trust. She is choosing to deploy her energy into supporting your presence rather than fighting against it. Of course, context dictates that a woman who is simply passive or emotionally exhausted might also stop resisting, but an exhausted person retreats into apathy and emotional detachment. A woman who is yielding her frame out of deep attraction remains vibrant, attentive, and deeply engaged with you while letting you take the lead. Now, you might be thinking that modern women never want a man to lead, or that flexibility on her part just means she does not care about the outcome. That is the fundamental misunderstanding that causes millions of men to step over this signal every day. Men often mistake her total lack of friction for plain indifference, assuming that because she is not fighting for control, she must not be deeply invested. So they pull back, stop taking initiative, and demand that she make the decisions instead. By doing this, you inadvertently dismantle the very masculine structure she was seeking to trust, forcing her to put her armor back on and resume control. When a woman drops her resistance and trusts your lead, she is giving you the ultimate silent invitation. Once you recognize these 6 signals, your entire approach to understanding her intent shifts permanently. Understanding female psychology is not about overanalyzing every minor interaction or obsessively reading into every single gesture. It is about recognizing the broader behavioral pattern when a woman quietly lowers her guard, drops her social defenses, and invites you to take a grounded, confident lead in her life. When you see her remove social distance, soften her voice, share her unpolished world, consult your wisdom, linger in her touch, and yield her frame, you no longer have to guess where you stand. You can step forward with calm assurance, knowing that her actions have already spoken for her. Which of these 6 signals have you noticed in your own life recently without realizing what it actually meant? Share your experience in the comments below. I read every comment to see how these patterns show up in your daily life. Subscribe to the channel to gain access to continuous, deep-level insights into female behavior and attraction strategies that keep you grounded as a man. In the next video, we will explore the 4 conversational traps women use to test if a man is truly grounded enough to handle this level of intimacy.